The knock on my door was sharp and unexpected. I opened it to find my mother, Carol, standing there with my brother, Jason, smirking behind her. "We know about your salary, Lauren," she said, pushing past me into my apartment. "It's time you started supporting this family properly. We need $5,000 a month starting now," Jason added. "Yeah, sis, you owe us." I stood frozen, my own family seeing me not as a daughter or sister, but as an ATM. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and at 28 years old, I thought I had finally built a life that was truly mine. As a senior software developer at a thriving tech startup in Austin, Texas, I had traded the constant uncertainty of my childhood for the quiet satisfaction of a steady paycheck and my own modern apartment overlooking Lady Bird Lake. That particular Thursday evening, I was mentally drained but content, having just wrapped up a complex coding project. The setting sun cast long golden beams across my living room, and I was savoring the rare moment of peace with a cup of chamomile tea. Then came the knock. Not the friendly tap of a neighbor or the polite rap of a delivery person. This was a sharp, insistent pounding that echoed through my quiet space. Setting my nerves on edge immediately, I peered through the peephole and my blood ran cold. Standing in the hallway were two figures I hadn't seen in over a year. My mother, Carol, her blonde hair perfectly styled as always, and my younger brother Jason, now 21, slouching with his hands in his pockets, a familiar smirk playing on his lips. A lifetime of conditioned obedience made me turn the lock. The door swung open. "Lauren, sweetheart," my mother said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that felt rehearsed. She didn't wait for an invitation. She simply brushed past me, her eyes doing a quick, appraising sweep of my apartment, taking in the minimalist furniture, the expensive sound system, the floor-to-ceiling windows with their panoramic view. Jason followed, bumping my shoulder lightly as he entered. "Nice place," he grunted, though his tone suggested the opposite. He immediately headed for my fridge. My mother turned to me, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We know about your salary, Lauren." The words hung in the air, stark and ugly. My stomach twisted into a knot. She continued, her tone shifting from sweet to businesslike. "A senior developer at Apex Tech? Don't be modest, we did our research. It's time you started supporting this family properly." She took a step closer. "We need $5,000 a month. Starting now." Jason popped open a can of my expensive craft soda, gulping it down. "Yeah, sis," he added, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "You owe us. Mom's been struggling, and I've got tuition. It's the least you can do." I stood frozen in the doorway of my own home, the chill from the hallway seeping into my bones. I felt like I was 9 years old again, watching my father walk out for the last time, leaving me with a mother whose love always seemed to come with a price tag and a brother who learned from her that my needs were always secondary. A memory, sharp and painful, surfaced. I was 12, clutching a report card with all A's. My mother had glanced at it, then tossed it on the kitchen counter. "That's nice, Lauren. Jason has a football game tonight. Can you make sure his uniform is clean? And we need to pick up a new gaming controller for him. His broke." My achievements were footnotes. Jason's wants were headlines. I had clawed my way out of that dynamic. I worked 2 jobs through community college, teaching myself to code late into the night. I survived on ramen and ambition, fueled by the determination to never feel that powerless again. I landed an internship, then a job, and through relentless effort, I'd climbed the ladder to a 6-figure salary, a number that represented safety, independence, and freedom. And now they were here to claim it. $5,000? I finally managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. "A month?" "Don't act so surprised," my mother chided, as if I were a child who had failed a simple math test. "We're family. This is what family does. You have so much, and Jason has needs. His future is at stake." "My future," Jason echoed, tossing the empty soda can into my recycling bin. A rare act of responsibility. That felt more like an insult. I can't be expected to get by on a student budget. It's embarrassing. I looked from my mother's determined face to my brother's entitled smirk. The cozy, safe life I had built for myself felt suddenly fragile, under siege by the very people who were supposed to be my foundation. The tea on my counter was cold. The golden light of sunset had faded, leaving my apartment in shadow. They had found me. They knew my worth, not as a person, but as a source of income. And as they made themselves comfortable on my sofa, already acting like they belonged here. I knew this wasn't a request. It was a shakedown. The little girl who craved her mother's approval was screaming inside. But the woman I had become, the survivor, was slowly straightening her spine. The war for my peace had just begun, and the first battle was fought in the doorway of my own home. After they left, my mother with a final, pointed, "We'll expect the first transfer by Friday." And Jason with a condescending pat on my shoulder. I stood in the center of my living room for a long time. The air still felt charged with their presence, the ghost of their demands clinging to my furniture, my things, the very air I breathed. $5,000 a month. The number echoed in my head, absurd and terrifying. It wasn't just the money, though, that was staggering enough. It was the sheer audacity, the unearned entitlement that left me feeling violated. They hadn't asked about my life, my job, my friends. They'd marched in, assessed my assets, and presented their bill. The research my mother mentioned nagged at me. How did they know? My salary wasn't public information. I was a private person, my social media locked down tight. A cold dread began to pool in my stomach. I went to my laptop, my fingers trembling slightly as I opened my browser. I typed my name into a search engine. Lauren Mitchell, Austin Tech. The first few results were harmless. My LinkedIn profile, some old college athletic photos. Then I saw it. A link to a local tech industry newsletter from 3 months ago. Apex Tech announces key promotions. My heart sank as I clicked it. There, halfway down the article, was my name. Lauren Mitchell promoted to senior developer. Back-end systems. The article didn't list my salary, of course, but it didn't have to. For someone like my mother, who had always been obsessed with status and money, it was a flashing neon sign. Senior developer at a well-funded startup in Austin. She would have known exactly what that meant. She'd probably called friends who had kids in tech, looked up average salary ranges online. She'd done her homework. I felt sick. My professional achievement, something I was genuinely proud of, had been reduced to a target, a beacon that drew them straight to my door. The next day I agreed to meet them at a coffee shop downtown, hoping that a public place would temper their demands. I was wrong. They were already there when I arrived. My mother sipping a latte, Jason scrolling through his phone. He'd already ordered an elaborate, expensive drink and a pastry, which sat largely untouched. "Lauren, so glad you came to your senses," my mother began, not wasting a second. "I haven't agreed to anything," I said, my voice low but firm. "I want to know what this is really about. You've never shown any interest in my career before. Don't be dramatic," she waved a hand dismissively. "We're interested now. We're family. Your success is our success." Jason looked up from his phone. "Yeah, so about the money. I was thinking. 5,000 is cool for starters, but I'm gonna need a new car too. Mine's a piece of junk. Can't be seen driving that around campus." I stared at him, disbelief warring with fury. "A new car? Jason, do you have any idea what you're asking?" "He's your brother," my mother cut in, her voice hardening. "He deserves to have what the other students have. You don't want him to be embarrassed, do you? We've struggled for so long, Lauren. It's your turn to carry the weight." The manipulation was so blatant, so practiced. She was reframing their greed as my familial duty, their entitlement as my moral failing. I thought of all the times I'd gone without as a kid. New clothes, school trips, birthday parties, so Jason could have the latest sneakers or a new video game console. The pattern hadn't changed. Only the price tag had grown. "I can't just give you $5,000 a month," I said, trying to keep my composure. "I have bills, a mortgage, a life." "You have more than enough," my mother snapped, her patience wearing thin. "We saw your apartment. Don't pretend you're struggling. We're the ones who are struggling. After everything I sacrificed for you." "What sacrifices?" The words were out before I could stop them, sharp and brittle. "You sacrificed what exactly?" "You were always there for him." I gestured at Jason, who was now taking a selfie with his expensive coffee. "When was the last time you asked me how I was doing?" "Really asked?" Her face tightened. "This isn't about the past. This is about now. Are you going to help your family or not?" The ultimatum hung in the air. I looked at my mother's unyielding expression and my brother's bored indifference, and I knew there would be no reasoning with them. They didn't see me as Lauren. They saw me as a resource. "I need to think about it," I said, standing up. It was a stall tactic, and we all knew it. My mother stood too, her eyes cold. "Don't think too long, Lauren. Family shouldn't have to beg." I left the coffee shop, the sweet smell of roasted beans now making me nauseous. Their investigation into my life felt like a profound violation. They hadn't earned the right to know my success. They hadn't been there for the all-nighters, the moments of self-doubt, the quiet triumphs. They'd just swooped in to harvest the rewards. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed the conversations, the demands, the sheer audacity. I thought about the LinkedIn profile I'd carefully curated, the professional milestone I'd been so proud to share with my actual network of supportive colleagues and friends. They had weaponized it against me. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from my mother. "Mom, Jason found a car he likes. Sent you the link. Let's talk tomorrow about the down payment." Attached was a link to a brand new sports car. The price tag made my breath catch. I didn't reply. I just lay there in the dark, the glow of my phone screen illuminating the determined set of my jaw. Their investigation was over. Now it was my turn to do some digging of my own. I needed to understand how far they were willing to go. And more importantly, I needed to build my defenses. The woman who had coded her way out of poverty was not about to let herself be hacked by her own family. The harassment was subtle at first. A text from my mother every other day. "Have you thought about our talk? Jason's tuition is due soon. We're counting on you. Lauren." Then it escalated. They started calling. My mother's calls were clipped and demanding, while Jason's were whiny and entitled. "When are you sending the money, sis? I need to put a deposit on that car." I stopped answering. I let every call go to voicemail, every text sit unread. I built a digital wall around myself, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. They knew where I lived. They knew where I worked. The confrontation at my workplace was what finally shattered the last fragile hope I'd been clinging to. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the deep work zone, headphones on, lines of code flowing across my screen. A gentle tap on my shoulder made me jump. It was Sarah from marketing, her face apologetic. "Lauren, sorry to interrupt. There are some people here to see you. They're insisting it's urgent family business." My blood went cold. I didn't need to ask who it was. I slowly pulled off my headphones, the cheerful, open-plan office suddenly feeling like a cage. I could see them standing by the reception desk near the glass entrance. My mother, in a sharp business suit she couldn't possibly afford, and Jason wearing a new, expensive-looking jacket, looking around the trendy office with a critic's eye. My colleagues were glancing over, curious. This was my sanctuary, my place of competence and respect, and they were invading it. I stood, my legs feeling like wood, and walked toward them. "What are you doing here?" I hissed, keeping my voice low. "We couldn't reach you," my mother said, her voice carrying in the quiet space. "You left us no choice. We need an answer, Lauren. Today. This is my workplace," I said, my cheeks burning. "You can't just show up here." "Why not?" Jason chimed in, his voice loud and obnoxious. "Ashamed of us? Ashamed of your own family?" A few of my co-workers were openly staring now. I saw my manager, David, look up from his desk, a concerned frown on his face. "Let's talk outside," I pleaded, desperate to get them out of there. "No," my mother said flatly. "We'll talk right here. Are you going to honor your obligations to your family or not?" The word obligations felt like a slap. My vision swam with a mix of rage and humiliation. This was a power play, a public shaming designed to break me. It was then that I noticed Jason's eyes. They weren't on me. They were darting around, looking at the desks, at the computer screens. He took a half step toward an empty workstation near us, his fingers twitching as if he wanted to touch the keyboard. A horrifying realization dawned on me. This wasn't just about pressuring me. They were scoping the place out. My mother had hacked my father's email for information. What was to stop Jason from trying to access a company computer? To dig for more financial data, or worse, cause a scene that could jeopardize my job? "Get out," I said, my voice shaking but loud enough for David to hear. "Get out of my office right now." My mother's eyes widened in feigned shock. "Lauren, how dare you speak to me that way?" "I said get out," I repeated, pointing toward the door. "Security will escort you if I have to call them." The mask finally slipped. My mother's face contorted into a mask of pure fury. "You selfish, ungrateful girl. After everything I've done for you, we are your family." Jason, seeing his mother's meltdown, decided to double down. "Yeah. You think you're so much better than us with your fancy job and your rich friends? You owe us." It was a spectacle. My mother's shouting, Jason's petulant yelling, the stunned silence of my colleagues. David was already on his feet, heading toward reception, his phone in his hand. That's when I knew. This was the breaking point. They weren't just toxic. They were dangerous. They would tear down everything I had built, my career, my reputation, my peace, to get what they wanted. The little girl who just wanted her mother's love was finally, completely buried under the rubble of their greed. David reached us, his voice calm but firm. "Folks, you need to leave the premises immediately. This is a place of business." My mother turned her wrath on him. "This is a family matter. My daughter is an employee here, and you are disrupting our workplace," David finished, his tone leaving no room for argument. He gestured to the security guard who had just arrived. They were let out, my mother shooting me a look of such venomous betrayal it felt physical. Jason yelled over his shoulder, "This isn't over, Lauren. You'll be sorry." The glass doors slid shut behind them. The office was utterly silent for a moment. Then the gentle hum of work slowly resumed. I stood there, trembling, utterly exposed. David put a hand on my shoulder. "Lauren, are you okay? Do you need to take the rest of the day?" I shook my head, tears of shame and anger pricking my eyes. "I'm so sorry, David. I'm so sorry." "Don't be," he said quietly. "Go home. We'll talk tomorrow." I didn't argue. I gathered my things with numb hands and fled. In the safety of my car, I finally let the tears fall. They weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of finality. I drove straight to the law offices of Sullivan and Gray. I didn't have an appointment, but the receptionist must have seen the desperate look in my eyes. Mark Sullivan, a partner known for his work in civil harassment cases, agreed to see me for a few minutes. I sat in his quiet, wood-paneled office and told him everything. The unexpected visit, the financial demands, the coffee shop confrontation, and finally, the horrific scene at my workplace. I showed him the texts, the link to the car, and told him about my mother's history of manipulation. He listened intently, taking notes. When I finished, he set his pen down. "Lauren, what you're describing is financial harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Their actions at your workplace could also be construed as an attempt to interfere with your employment. You have grounds for a restraining order." Hearing a legal professional validate. My experience was like a life raft in a stormy sea. "I want to file for one," I said, my voice stronger now. "I want them legally required to stay away from me, my home, and my job." "Then we'll do that," Mark said. "We'll also send them a formal cease and desist letter. It's the first step in taking back control." Walking out of that office, the Texas sun felt warmer on my skin. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was now joined by a steely resolve. I had reached my breaking point, and instead of breaking, I had chosen to fight back. The law was my code now, and I was ready to compile a new future for myself, one where family was defined by respect, not ransom. The week after filing the restraining order was the longest of my life. Every knock at the door, every ping from my phone, sent my heart into a frantic rhythm. I jumped at shadows, my nerves stretched taut as piano wires. The silence from my mother and Jason was more unnerving than their previous harassment. It felt like the calm before a storm. The first breach came via email. My mother, using a new address I didn't recognize, sent a long, rambling message. It was a masterpiece of manipulation, shifting from wounded victim to outraged parent in the span of a few paragraphs. "Lauren, I cannot believe you would do this to your own mother. A restraining order? After everything I sacrificed for you? I carried you for 9 months. I raised you. This is how you repay me? You've been poisoned, brainwashed by your selfishness and this new life of yours. You've chosen to destroy your family over a little bit of money. We needed your help, and you treated us like criminals. Your brother is devastated. You will regret this, Lauren. When you come to your senses, don't expect us to be waiting with open arms. A mother you have deeply wounded. Carol?" I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it directly to Mark Sullivan. "This is a violation, isn't it?" I wrote in my accompanying note. His response was swift. "Yes, it constitutes contact. We'll add it to the file." Hold fast, Lauren. Holding fast was the hardest thing I'd ever done. The guilt was a physical weight on my chest. Was I being too harsh? Was I the selfish one, just as she said? The old programming, installed over a lifetime, screamed at me to apologize, to fix it, to make the conflict go away. But the new Lauren, the one who had been publicly humiliated and professionally threatened, held the line. The storm finally broke on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was working from home, trying to find solace in the rhythmic patter against my windows when my intercom buzzed. I flinched. I walked over to the video screen, and my worst fear was confirmed. They were downstairs in the lobby, drenched from the rain, their faces set in grim determination. I pressed the talk button. "You need to leave, now. You are violating a court order." My mother's face, pixelated on the small screen, was a mask of fury. "Let us up, Lauren. We're not leaving until we talk to you. This is ridiculous." "I'm calling the police," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Go ahead," Jason shouted, leaning into the camera. "Call them. Tell them you're having your own family arrested. Let's see how that looks." I didn't engage. I simply picked up my phone and dialed 911. "Hello," I said, my voice clear. "I have a restraining order against 2 individuals. They are currently at my residence, refusing to leave. I feel threatened." I gave them my address, my hand trembling only slightly. I went back to the intercom screen. "The police are on their way. You should leave before they get here." My mother's composure finally shattered. "You are a vile, hateful person," she screamed, her voice distorted by the cheap speaker. "I wish I never had you. You've always been a disappointment. Your father was right to leave." The words were meant to be a killing blow, and for a second, they stole the air from my lungs. But then something miraculous happened. Instead of collapsing under their weight, I felt them bounce off the new armor I was building. Her words were no longer my truth. I watched on the screen as a patrol car pulled up, its lights casting red and blue reflections on the wet pavement. 2 officers got out. The conversation was brief. I saw my mother gesticulating wildly, playing the distraught mother. I saw Jason pointing up at my window. But the officers were firm. They had the paperwork. The order was clear. I saw the exact moment reality crashed down on them. The moment they realized that their emotional currency was worthless here, in the face of the law. Their shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of them. The officers escorted them away from the building. And I watched as their figures, small and defeated, were swallowed by the rain. I sank to the floor, my back against the door, and cried. But these weren't tears of sadness or guilt. They were tears of release. It was over. The line had been held. The legal system had seen their behavior for what it was and had protected me. An hour later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I had a feeling. I let it go to voicemail. "Lauren, it's your mother." Her voice on the recording was quiet, stripped of its usual sharpness. It sounded old and tired. "The police. They told us we could be arrested. I don't understand how it came to this. We're your family." There was a long pause, then the call ended. I saved the voicemail and sent it to Mark. More evidence. But listening to it, I felt the last lingering shred of guilt dissolve. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the pain they had caused, only bewilderment that their actions had consequences. It was all the confirmation I needed. The following week, the formal hearing for the permanent restraining order was swift. My mother and Jason didn't show up. Our evidence, the texts, the email, the voicemail, the police report from their visit, was overwhelming. The judge made it permanent without hesitation. Walking out of the courthouse, the sun was shining. The legal battle was won. The fortress walls around my life were now reinforced by the full power of the law. They could no longer contact me, come near my home, or approach my workplace. A sense of safety, profound and deep, began to seep back into my bones. The war wasn't entirely over. The emotional scars would take longer to heal, but the most immediate threat had been neutralized. I had used the tools of the civilized world to protect myself from the chaos. Of my own blood, I had chosen myself, and in doing so, I had finally, truly, begun to be free. The silence that followed the granting of the permanent restraining order was different this time. It wasn't the tense, waiting silence of before, but a deep, profound quiet that felt like healing. For the first time in months, I could breathe without a weight on my chest. I could sleep through the night without my phone jolting me awake. The fortress walls held. The first thing I did was focus on the internal damage. David, my manager, had been incredibly supportive after the office incident. I sat down with him and briefly, professionally explained the situation, that I had taken legal steps to resolve a persistent family harassment issue. He simply nodded and said, "Your well-being comes first, Lauren. This is a safe space for you." His trust was a balm. A colleague, Maya, who had witnessed the whole awful scene, started inviting me for coffee. Slowly, I began to open up to her. She didn't offer pity, just quiet listening and unwavering support. Through her, I started building a new social circle. People who liked me for my sense of humor, my passion for coding, my love for hiking the Greenbelt, not for my bank account. This was my chosen family, built on mutual respect, not obligation. But I knew the scars went deeper than surface-level anxiety. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Evans, recommended through my company's wellness program. In her calm, sunlit office, I began the real work. It wasn't really about the money, was it, Lauren? Dr. Evans asked during our third session. I shook my head, tears welling up as the truth I'd been avoiding finally surfaced. No, it was about finally feeling seen by her. And the moment she saw me, all she saw was a dollar sign. It felt like my entire childhood was a lie. We unpacked it all. The years of being the reliable one, the invisible child, the deep-seated belief that I had to earn love through sacrifice. I learned to separate my mother's narrative from my own truth. Her abandonment, her favoritism, her entitlement, they were reflections of her flaws, not my worth. It was a painful but liberating excavation of my soul. As I healed, I felt a strong pull to create something positive from the pain. The idea came to me during a long walk around the lake. I had been so fortunate to find my path through coding, a skill that offered independence and purpose. What about kids who didn't have that opportunity? I decided to start a small nonprofit, Code for a Future. The mission was simple: provide free coding boot camps and mentorship for underprivileged teenagers in Austin, specifically focusing on young women and kids from foster care. I used a portion of my savings to fund the initial setup, renting a community center space and buying laptops. Maya, my colleague, was my first volunteer, teaching a module on front-end development. My friend Ben, a project manager, helped organize the curriculum. The energy in that room on the first day was electric, full of curiosity and a hunger I recognized from my own past. Teaching a shy 15-year-old girl named Chloe how to write her first line of HTML, seeing her face light up when "Hello World" appeared on the screen. It filled a void in me that my family had carved out. This was my legacy, not the money I could give, but the knowledge and confidence I could help build in others. About 6 months into this new chapter, I received an email. The subject line was an apology. It was from my father. "Lauren, I heard through the family grapevine what happened with your mother and Jason. I'm so deeply sorry. Sorry for not being stronger when you were a child. Sorry for leaving you in that environment. And sorry that you had to go through this alone as an adult. What they did was unforgivable. You were right to protect yourself. I know I don't deserve it, but I would be grateful for the chance to talk, to see the woman you've become. With love and regret, Dad." I read the email a dozen times. There was no blame shifting, no excuses, just a straightforward apology and an acknowledgement of my pain. It was everything my mother's communications had never been. After a few days of thought, I replied. I was cautious, but the door wasn't completely closed. We started with emails, then moved to phone calls. The conversations were awkward at first, filled with long pauses and unspoken history. But we persisted. He told me about his life now, running a small, successful bookstore in Oregon. He'd been in therapy himself. He'd remarried a kind woman named Susan. A few months later, I flew out to visit him. Meeting him at the airport was surreal. He looked older, softer, his eyes holding a peace I'd never seen before. He hugged me and it felt real. Staying with him and Susan in their cozy, book-filled home was a healing experience. We didn't talk about my mother much. Instead, we talked about books, his business, my work, Code for a Future. He was genuinely proud of me. One evening, he said, "You built yourself from the ground up, Lauren. I always knew you were capable of incredible things. I'm just sorry I wasn't there to see more of it." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. The lost years were a chasm we couldn't completely cross. But we were building a new, quieter relationship as adults, on a foundation of honesty and respect. It was enough. Back in Austin, my life flourished. My work at Apex Tech was more fulfilling than ever. Code for a Future had its first graduate land a paid internship. My circle of friends grew. I even started dating a little. A nice guy named Ryan I met at a tech meetup, who was fascinated by my work with the kids and made me laugh without an agenda. One evening, I was hosting a small dinner party at my apartment. Maya, Ben, Ryan, and a few others from the nonprofit were there. The room was filled with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and easy conversation. As I looked around at these people who had chosen to be in my life, who supported me and celebrated my successes without demanding anything in return, I felt a profound sense of peace. I stepped out onto my balcony, looking out at the glittering lights of Austin reflected on the lake. The memory of my mother and Jason pounding on my door felt like a scene from someone else's life. They had tried to shrink my world, to make it about their demands and my compliance. Instead, their actions had forced me to expand it, to build stronger boundaries, to seek deeper connections, to find a purpose that was entirely my own. The revenge wasn't in their legal defeat or their social exile. The true lasting revenge was this, my unwavering happiness. It was in this vibrant, full life I had created, a life so rich in meaning and connection that their absence was no longer a wound, but a footnote. I took a deep breath of the warm Texas air. The past was finally firmly in the past. My future was here, in this city, with these people, in this life I had built for myself. And it was brighter than I had ever imagined. I learned that the strongest foundation you can build your life on isn't the approval of others, but the unwavering respect you have for yourself. True family isn't defined by blood, but by the people who see your worth, without a price tag, and who celebrate your light without trying to dim it for their own benefit.